welcome everybody to Art of the Possible. We have a little bit of a conversation to have around manufacturing, specifically data, some of the automation tools that are out there and available to us. And we have a couple smart people here, I'm not one of them, to really facilitate the conversation. So I wanted to make sure that I introduced everybody. I'm Lou Simon, Vice President of Optima Elevate. We do a lot of work with our industry perspectives, industry point of views, forward-thinking technology and how we actually enable it for our customers, specifically in manufacturing, oil and gas, med device, a lot of these spaces. We're able to stitch together a number of different solutions really to help solve the needs of our customers. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And to my, who wants it first? Darren?
So hi everybody, Darren Solomon. I am an architect with Mulesoft specifically, so I study and think about integration all day, every day. Also APIs, I've been doing APIs for as long as I've had like hair. I used to have hair when I started that, so it's been quite a long time. I work mostly in manufacturing, auto and utilities. Manufacturing is my favorite thing, so I'll tell you a little bit why later on. But yeah, so we're here to have fun today.
Having fun is our name, I guess.
Yeah.
So hello everyone, Flavio Zanetti. I run the solution engineering team for Mulesoft, focused on manufacturing for North America.
Great intro. And we can get started if we want to get into it. So setting the stage, right? Like we want this to be a little bit conversational. We're all sitting up here, you're all sitting there. We want to try to have a back and forth conversation, but we're setting the stage with kind of trends in manufacturing and how they're driving a lot of the technology needs that are out there in the space, right? So we see this with a number of customers, from Salesforce, from a Mulesoft perspective, from an Optima perspective, when we're actually engaging with our customers that are in the field. Really the omni-channel customer, the data-driven approach to how you're interacting with a lot of the folks on the ground, and a lot of the workforce challenges that people are seeing today, right? So you have customers that want more data, you have trouble hiring, facilitating people on the ground from a field service perspective. You want to be able to understand a whole purview of what your company is doing from a sales perspective, from a delivery perspective, from an installation perspective, and really being able to understand that in a way that you can expose the data for your business. You can access, maybe there's spreadsheets in different places, maybe there's different ERPs out there. I must have heard 6 or 7 new ERPs within the last 6 hours of talking to a number of customers that were coming in and out of here that I haven't even heard of. So there's a lot of disparate data all over the place. We want to have that conversation today from a manufacturing perspective, which enables a lot of analytics and a lot of conversation around how you can drive new business models, new revenue streams, new ways to operate. And don't forget, as Adam and I say a lot whenever we're having conversations with customers, every company is a data company. Whether you sell raw materials, whether you're servicing porta-johns outside in the streets of San Francisco, you are a data-driven company. You need to know where those things go, what they're doing, what your teams are doing, and how to manage them. We're going to talk a little bit today about how to expose that and use the information. So what does that mean, right? Like, I'm going to go through this very quickly. Deploy, deliver, generate, drive. These are just terms that we threw out there as a kind of a pretty visual. But whenever you think about it, this is all around the assets that you deploy, the people that you deploy in the field, and actually how you can maintain them, manage them in the spaces that they're in. So very quick slide, and going into the next one, I think I can introduce Darren.
Sure, absolutely. So has anybody ever heard of this thing, AI? I think everybody's been talking about it this week. I think everybody's been talking about it since ChatGPT came out and we all started playing and writing rap songs about our cats and stuff, dynamically generated. So this conversation is a lot about AI, but the truth of the matter is I don't want it to be a buzzword. I don't want it to be a thing. I mean, I think about manufacturing, and like I mentioned earlier, I do manufacturing, energy, utilities. I like manufacturing the most, and it's because of the pragmatism. Is that a real word? I just made that word up. The pragmatism. I'm not going to try that one again. But you know what I mean. Pragmatism. Maybe. So, and I always think about it like I'm old enough to remember the first iPhone. I don't know if I'm the oldest guy here, but I had the first iPhone, right? And so it never did anything really good, but the Androids were like coming out and they were doing really cool stuff. And I remember Steve Jobs coming out and basically saying, yeah, you can't copy and paste yet, but they beat us to the market first, but we do it right. And so we're going to do it right, but we might not be first, but we're going to be right. And so when I think about manufacturing, I think about like when you adopt newer technologies, when manufacturers start to bring those things into the operationalizing. Oh, I got that the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is going to be a conversation. So you guys can try that word later. So. So when you bring it in, it makes sense. It makes sense for the business. It's not just a shiny toy. It's not the keys that you're like, jingling over here. When you bring it in, it's for a practical reason. And I think manufacturing and the customers that I work with, we're at that inflection point now. Mm-hmm. How do we most effectively use like this new thing? And ChatGPT brought it into the zeitgeist of people's consciousness, but it really is a real thing, and we can really take a benefit and advantage of it. So. This is really kind of the model, and we're going to talk about this model a little bit, but you start across the bottom. You've got your large language models, your LLMs. Like, why are they interesting? Do manufacturers really need to have, like, data scientists and really trying to figure out what these models look like? I have an opinion on that. We'll probably talk about that, whether or not it's about the model or it's about the data, and I think Lou probably already, like, hinted it's really about the data. How do I get that data? So that data is interesting, and you have to pass it to a large language model, but how do you make sure that it's not, you ever hear the word toxicity in AI? Do you guys ever hear about that? Yep. It's like toxicity is like these really bad things like biases and all these things that can come out of language models. So you have to be careful of that, but you also have to be careful about the people sending data to these models. Like, is it PII data? Is it intellectual property data? Like, we have to be careful about what we send. So as you start walking up the stack there from the model, Einstein and the trust layer handles some of that toxicity and that sort of thing, and API management really handles the governance and control around the data that actually gets sent to these models, because you have to be really careful of that. And then finally, when you get up to the higher sort of, this is the value chain now. As you get to the top, this is where I think manufacturers really start to get value out of AI. When you do things like automation. How do I get to my data? How do I automate repetitive tasks? How do I take the entire value chain of what I'm distributing from raw materials all the way through finished goods, and how do I automate that process? So a lot of different tools in that space. We talk about things like robotic process automation, RPA. We talk about integration. If I can automate the fix of a machine, for example, with RPA using data, how can I get more information about, when that thing is up for service? How do I integrate that with other data sets so I can really understand how to keep that machine alive and generating revenue? So really, when we talk about manufacturing and AI, it's really, again, it's about getting access to that data in those proprietary systems, those older systems sometimes. The stuff, I hate the word legacy. People always talk, because it's got a bad connotation, like legacy, it's old. Legacy built our businesses. Those things are important. They're core to our businesses. They're great things. We just have to figure out how to modernize that experience. Sometimes that happens with things like RPA. Sometimes that happens with things like APIs. So all of that stuff is really, really interesting. So we're going to talk a lot about what data means in an AI-driven world. But data and AI is all about getting access to information.
Anything to add, Flavio?
No, I think the one thing that I'd love to understand from your perspective, Darren, is what are some of the differences that manufacturers have versus other industries, right? If you look, for example, if you compare manufacturers with automotive, which is, they also build cars, but it's a little different mindset, and all that. Also utilities. What about consumer goods? They're also manufacturers.
Yeah.
What are some of the differences that we see in those industries?
Yeah. So I love the question. It's almost like we planted that question. We actually didn't.
We didn't. No, it's just.
This is Stump the Chump right now. He's like, how do I get Darren? Yeah. Thanks, Flavio. I'll remember that. No, but I think the real difference, honestly, it's a good question. I think the real difference is this: in other industries, in utilities, in finance, and insurance, in other industries, you have a universal language. Yes. And when you have a universal language, you could really then train models. But in manufacturing, my domain, my auto domain, my widget domain, my digger domain, my bulldozer domain, that's specific to that domain, but it's also specific to the manufacturer themselves. So the amount of universal language to train the model is less, because we don't have Like, if you're looking in finance, I don't care if you're Chase or Visa or MasterCard, a transaction is a transaction. But my widget is not a widget. My Post-it note is not a car. Like, they're different things. So I think that's the real difference, and that brings unique challenges to manufacturing.
And I agree with that as well, Darren. Like, talking about the use case and how specific it is to each individual company, whenever you're having that conversation, that's how you can drive data to the end that you want it to achieve accurately, right? Like, and it is about the data and about how you actually want to use it in the space. So, next, right?
Yep.
Like, setting up this conversation, and this is an interesting set of personas that we have up here, and it's really kind of touching into that use case, right? Like, we were just talking about that. It's interesting to the industry perspective. I don't know if you guys are aware, but Optima has an industry perspective downstairs on all the walls. So it's one of those things that come to light whenever we're talking about it. But again, you see here, whenever you're thinking about AI, right? Gen AI is the big one that everybody's talking about, again, because of that zeitgeist. I used, yesterday we were having a conversation, and I was playing around that around December timeframe. My daughter was just using it to do all of her homework, right? So that was her use case. And it worked out very well in that use case, except for her teachers found out. So it was a little bit interesting for me to have that conversation. But again, driving what prompts, what information is there, based on your individual use case is one of the important things. I think Benioff showed it today on the keynote, or one of the guys on the AI keynote, about the prompt engineering and the context that you're passing in and out of these LLMs. Extremely important. What data you can pass into the models, what use case in the context that data is being set into, and then how that context gets moved back and forth is very important to make it accurate and as precise as we possibly can in that flow. So I don't know if you guys have an opinion on that as well.
Yeah, I think the intelligence between the AI is going to be as relevant as the scheme of the data that we have available, right?
Yeah.
If we have, it's almost like the old saying of garbage in, garbage out, yes, right? Or intelligence in, intelligence out. If the scheme of data that we have is an intelligent scheme of data that's properly prepared, it's planned, it's developed for that purpose, AI will work really well. But if that scheme of data is not effective to the business or the purpose that you're trying to achieve, that's a challenge that a lot of companies are going to have. And to connect different schemes of AI data, that's when we can really help, right?
Absolutely.
The things that we can really help.
Absolutely. Yeah, my daughter used ChatGPT for homework too. So all the parents out there, here's the clue.
Purposely not letting my daughters use it.
Yeah.
No.
So here's the clue. And then you can thank me later. So use like Google Docs or whatever, and then just go to version control and see if the entire document was written with one edit, and then you know that happens. Or if it starts with
that's
really
a great
good
trick.
tip.
Yeah,
really good tip.
Or if the document starts with, yeah, sure, no problem, and then it has. That's the two ways I found. That's the two ways. We should have probably talked to Benioff about the Einstein layer. Can we get like a little check in the Einstein layer for that?
For like cheating on test.
Yeah.
The cheating on test layer would be interesting to put in there.
Yeah.
But I think you guys get it, right? Anybody have any interesting use cases that they've tried to feed to AI before we get into the next slide? Nobody? LinkedIn recommendations? How'd that?
Somebody who's an average performer,
Yeah.
you don't want to ruin his career.
Yeah. Did that work out for you?
I said he was an average performer. I wouldn't want to work with him again, but
Yeah, but if you do that, you're going to ruin that person's career. Yeah.
Yeah.
a human being has a family. Give me a recommendation. And
Yeah.
he stuck in the lane, and it was a perfect background right down the middle.
Nice.
Yeah. This entire speech, by the way, was generated with ChatGPT.
My last presentation was.
The whole deck, right? So
Actually
sorry.
helped a friend. She needed to break up with someone that she cared about.
That's my favorite. Yeah. Honestly.
She did a great
Break up by
Wow.
artificial intelligence.
We're getting
is
very
maybe my
creative here.
Wow.
I love it.
Right?
That is awesome.
Very cool.
Wow.
Yeah, very cool use cases in the audience. And as you can see, we can be as creative as we can to use AI and drive it to what we need it to be. We want to drive it to be applied for the industries that we're working into, is the important key. So we have a little bit of a thought exercise. Everybody in this room has the ability to submit what you think is top of mind whenever you're thinking about RPA, generative AI, the context and the data that we've been talking about, and put that into the word cloud. And we're going to have conversations around which ones we think,
And
which ones come to the top.
Please don't put any words I can't pronounce.
Or will make me embarrassed on stage.
And, for those folks that have not picked up their phones yet, this is the time you're supposed to participate.
Yeah, and this is when we
The
want you to have your
conversation.
phones.
This is the time we're here. You're allowed to pick up your phones, scan the QR code, please.
We're gonna give everybody about 2 minutes to kind of put a few words in.
Flavio mentioned he's got a baseball bat in his bag, just in case there's no participation.
So it's a proven tool, man. It works.
Man, that breakup with GPT is
No, that's hilarious.
mind
That's
blowing.
the first.
That's hilarious.
I mean, you can honestly have it probably produce a text, write some code to send the text, do the publication. You don't have to interact with a human being now. Go ahead, Sierra.
So I just want to make sure that we're putting in the right information. So up here it says, what are your questions for us?
Yeah.
And then on this fantastic site that just popped up, it says, what are you hoping to get out of this session?
Either one works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have to stick to those questions. Those are just like, or little GPT prompts for you. So
This is just a thought experiment. It doesn't have to be as
Yeah.
precise as we're making it. We're good.
No, I was trying to get it to actually like form a question using 5 words that I made.
oh, that would be cool.
Are you chat GPT your input?
Yeah. What could stump Darren? When-
I see a couple people still working on the questions.
I see John over there. He's typing away.
One of the interesting things, I think Darren mentioned like the first iPhone. I got the first iPhone as well, and the coolest thing about it was I could get email on my phone all the time, right? And now we have like AIs, and everybody has a phone in their hand, and we're doing this. Like we built this presentation around everybody having their phone. That's a pretty crazy thing.
What was your favorite cell phone? I know my favorite.
My Samsung Epic Slide that I could just slide out.
Oh, that was a nice. Mine was the Motorola StarTech.
I
I
remember that one.
I love Blackberries.
Oh, the Blackberries.
like the
I
Blackberry?
was a crackberry.
Yeah.
Really?
I love the Blackberries. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I had the
keyboard
Pearl.
and
The
the
little.
touch.
99.7 Epic. I think that was no bowl. That was the 99.7 bowl.
Yeah.
I have a collection of them, because my first job was US Robotics. So I have all the phone pilots.
Nice.
I have the original iPod and iPod video.
Yeah.
All kind of, and I'm just adding 2 devices as I go.
I have my old one still in a box as well. Okay, so it looks like everybody's kind of done. And AV guys, can we switch over to the word cloud? So improve business process, manufacturing data, automation, AI is in the middle, obviously. Speed, integration, Gen AI.
Competition.
So where do we start? That's a lot. to
Yeah,
unpack.
that's a lot. So who put in AI? Because that seems to be the biggest one. Who put in AI? Anybody?
Well, a few
Yeah.
people for sure.
Yeah, a few people.
Nobody else wants to raise their hand for that one, right? But everybody put it in. Great audience participation today.
Well, I see Joe. So what do you when you hear AI, is it a buzzword? Like how does that hit your ear? Is it a buzzword? What is it exactly?
I think it is more of a social aspect first, and I have to conscientiously reframe myself to think about it.
Yeah.
As a professional. And I think the words I typed in were AI in chemical manufacturing.
Oh, okay.
Trying
Yeah.
to gear it towards how do I frame myself to understand what my customers are thinking about when they hear functionality as generic as AI.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Is anybody in this room burnt out on hearing the word AI?
Yeah.
Like I am, and really kind of understanding what it means in any space, right? Like that's a hard one too. And I think to your point, right? Like what does it mean to chemical manufacturing? What does it mean to me? How can I apply that? So again, coming back to the data, like we have manufacturing data, we have AI as our 2 biggest ones.
Yeah. Well, I think about so if I'm going to combine those, I'm going to put my hands together, manufacturing data and AI in the same thing. And what does that mean to me in context to the customers that I work with? Like if you're thinking about the shop floor, these guys that are fixing these giant machines or putting together these epic, outcomes on the factory floor, they are the smartest civil mechanical engineers in the world. They don't necessarily have this digital savviness behind them, right? That's not their business. That's not what they do. Right. So if you think about if I were to give, before generative AI, for example, if I were to give them an AI dashboard based on these models and these different trainings, and they had these charts and these things, because that's what AI was before generative AI. Really, it was these giant like spreadsheets and charts, and to have them interpret that like didn't make a whole lot of sense. But if a machine breaks down, for example, and you give them a natural language prompt saying like, hey, what's the likely problem because I'm jamming here and I got a problem over there, and you give them those natural prompts, and it starts to feed back to you like, hey, here's 9-step like fix for 99% of this particular problem. So giving them the tools on the shop floor to do their job more effectively. We talk about Skynet rising, right? Is Skynet going to rise and take all of our jobs? Like I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen today. I hope it doesn't happen today, because I still have to get home, and it's a long way away. But really, what is it going to do? It's going to make us more productive on the shop floor. So if you think about like what AI is doing, it's making it more accessible, right? That's why it's so interesting these days. It's accessible to the masses. I mentioned my Motorola StarTAC. We had AI back then when I would type, the number 3 4 times and get a B, and then it said, hey, maybe he's trying to say by the way or whatever. So like we've had this for a long time.
Yes.
Say again? Something like that. Yeah,
The
T9.
actual, the symbol.
But there, on that top, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just had a question. So when you say AI, I think it's about the type of AI
Yeah.
Yep.
and then using that for a purpose. So
Right.
Lou and I were working on stuff 8 months ago for internal upfront, trying to get generative AI to do some of what I think we were talking like kind of LinkedIn sourcing for us.
Yeah.
And then also reviewing resumes and job descriptions.
Sure.
Like candidates to look for candidates to hire.
Yep.
What we found was generative AI really sucks at going out and finding those people on LinkedIn, but RPA was really good at that.
Yes.
And then if we took the results from RPA and gave it to
The generative.
AI to go do the
Model.
summarization and look at the text, those two working together was like, that was harmony.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll use a different example. We tried to write where we wanted it to go look at a territory and go pull all the 10K, 10Qs, and then pull it in.
Yes.
Terrible. But if we took them, we went and got them. Now we didn't build a bot to do it, and we fed them into it. Then it gave us all this analysis, and we could ask it questions, and it was amazing what it was coming back with. But going to find it, it didn't do well. Once we fed it the analysis side of it.
And then we do this all the time, and we got kind of caught up in the hype of let's just have ChatGPT. We were using some auto GPT stuff. Go find all the 10Ks, for instance.
Yeah.
And I think we stumbled a lot doing that. And I'm curious how customers are seeing RPA plus AI or how they're using these things.
Yeah, so AI is not a new term, right? I mean, AI has been around for quite some time. But I want to go back to Darren's point, maybe connect to your point, Adam. So if you look at, for example, the person on the floor working those machines, right? The factory per individual that's there. And imagine if that person sees, hey, this machine is not operating at its optimum, capacity or level. Then the person picks up a phone, scans the machine, and that phone sends that image back with some generative AI models that can connect that particular snapshot. Hey, this has a potential issue of some kind, and then it triggers a service to say, you know what? Let me ship the part. Let me schedule the technician to go on site, so that the time it takes for that machine to be repaired, it's much, much quicker than it would have taken normally for somebody to come in and do the whole troubleshooting, analysis, and whatnot. Connecting RPA on the back end, sending that picture, pushing that picture to a model or a data scheme of some sort, connecting that with a service, that's an end-to-end process that we can, we really automate some of those services. And by the way, one of our largest, airplane manufacturers, not to be named, is building that as we speak.
Nice. Yeah, and that's an interesting point. I think to Adam's piece, do you guys think that multiple AIs should be used in an end-to-end process, right? Like, so multiple AI technologies.
We have to connect different AI lakes, so to
different AIs,
speak. Yes,
right.
absolutely.
So as
The
we're-
models are all good at different things.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think we keep getting back to the same thing. Like, we talk about this idea of data. So getting access to data, I think we all talk about like this awful word, this really hard word called integration, right? Integration is a hard thing. IT has typically been the bottleneck. It takes a long time to get things integrated. Really what RPA, in my opinion, and I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, and actually all of yours thoughts too. When I think about RPA, I think about the democratization. Oh, I got that word right the first time. The democratization of
word
innovation.
exists.
Yeah, it's a hard one. These are hard words. I know.
Did you plan
So-
them? Just checking.
So it's the democratization of innovation. How do I give really smart people the ability to get data? So this is a true statistic. There's 22 million engineers, developers on the planet. That's it. That's the entire sphere of engineers. There are 1 billion knowledge workers on the planet. So when we talk about like do more with less, right? That we always said do more with less, do more with less. I don't say do more with less anymore. I say do more with more. We've got more people that are participating and smart and they know what they want to do. I was talking to somebody from marketing earlier at lunch. They were in marketing of one of our customers and they were talking about I just need to get the data so I can do my campaign, my outbound campaign. It's like, how do I get the data? I have to wait for IT to get it. Now with things like RPA, I'm just going to go get the data myself. And I'm gonna enable these 1 billion knowledge workers to start innovating on behalf of IT. So it's like we used to call. You guys ever hear the word shadow IT? You ever hear that word? Yep. As an IT, I was an IT person most of my life. So as an IT person, we used to try to stomp out shadow IT. Like shadow IT was a bad word because what happens? Shadow IT, they build some application, everybody becomes dependent on it. That person decides to like leave, or it's too big to deal with anymore, so they throw it over the IT fence, and now IT is responsible for it. And you've got all kinds of security problems and scaling problems. You've got all of these problems. So we used to stomp out IT, but the problem is IT was stomping it out because we couldn't control it. That's why they were stomping it out. You give the tools with the rails, the guardrails, to allow people to do work for you. So like you give them the ability to build something, but it's governed, it's audited, it's compliant, it's secure. Like all of those wonderful things, those NFRs, those non-functional requirements, all the things that IT has to do. And then you can all of a sudden now invite 1 billion more people to help us deliver on our programs, on our projects. And so RPA is one of those secret weapons for the we'll call them the knowledge worker. The knowledge worker who understands their business better than IT ever could, but now they have the tools to actually do it.
Would you call that an integration mechanism? So
I absolutely do.
Like we have integration up there as one of the words.
But I think the secret sauce here is integration and automation together.
Yeah.
Right? Those two separately, right? They're great in what they do, but when you put them together, it's almost like 1 + 1 = 5.
Right.
Right? That's what the secret sauce
absolutely.
is.
But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, when I think about RPA and I think about automation, these are all the same. These are different ways to solve the same problem. And what is the problem? The problem is I've got disparate data. I've got silos of information. I've got to bring them all together in order to make any rational sense out of any of this. And it's not, it's like we've tried to solve this problem a million different ways. MDM solutions. We've tried to solve data lakes and data warehouses and all this other stuff. The complexity is just you can't. We used to talk about simplifying, right? This is another one of those things that back in my IT days. We always wanted to simplify and rationalize, simplify and rationalize. So you do that, you do a 5-year program, and by the time you finish that 5-year program, the world has changed, and the world is completely different than it was when you started. So now I'm just as complex. I've spent $40 billion, and I'm still in the same exact spot. So how do you manage complexity? It's not about simplifying complexity. How do you manage the complexity? And the complexity of data is a really hard problem that you need tooling for, you need automation, you need help, you need AI, right? Because AI is just kind of that little angel on my shoulder telling me like the things that I need to know in order to make rational and thoughtful decisions.
Yeah, very cool.
Interesting. If I look at that comment there, that it's not simplifying, but it's really bringing the complexities and making sense of them, right? Yeah. If you look at the ideas of scholar articles around manufacturing 4.0, it's really integrating all the sensors, the IoT, the cloud, the computing, the AI, and analytics, and all those things together to really make manufacturing more efficient, right?
Yep.
So.
And it has to be real time. Like we keep talking about, like we were talking earlier again, like batch processing. And I need my data right now. I mean, I thought, so AI is obviously going to change the world for the better, I know. But I remember talking to my wife about 5G because we all wanted that new iPhone, right? And is 5G interesting? 5G is game changing because that's the thing that's going to enable like smart cities and like, remote medical procedures and all of this other stuff. But that data has to go somewhere. So again, this is an integration problem. We're getting all of this telemetry through all of these sensors all over the place. But if I can't make sense of it, I can't do anything with it.
So hang on, I'm hearing that everything is an integration problem.
It's all an integration problem.
All right, just checking.
Yeah, Salesforce should buy a company that does that or something.
Oh, hang on, I think they did.
Oh,
oh, it's right here.
We bought a sock company?
No. Nice.
So what are you guys thinking about? I mean, does any of this make sense? Hi, Scott.
Hi. So I think part of the conversation we're having is the rest of the conversation, right? So if you get the buzz and you sit through the keynote and you get kind of fed it, what's the art of the possible? The rest of the conversation is if we want to contain this within the enterprise, because we want to put that trust layer on it, the app, Salesforce, has access to data in the app. But to proliferate that through the enterprise, we need to give the large language models and the AI access to the rest of the enterprise, which could be shop floor systems, it could
Sure.
be HR data, it could be.
ERPs, you name it, yeah.
That's where all this integration comes in, because the more you can feed the models, the better they're going to come back with.
100%.
And I think that's how you make it a reality. And then you end up with this kind of just producer-consumer thing that says, what's the right tool to get at that data?
Yep.
Is it something I should write a bot for to go fetch it? Is it something that should be integrated because it's going to happen lots of times?
Right.
And what's that stack look like from an API all the way to
Yep.
point to point?
Yep.
And I think that's the rounding out of thinking through the picture that just doesn't get talked about enough to bring it to reality. And otherwise, you just sit and spin and the art of the possible.
Yeah, and I think it's also taking it as close as you can to the work that's being driven, right? Like, so if you have a field tech doing something where they're at in the field using their mobile phone, whatever information is available to them, whether that be in a spreadsheet or another tool that they're using in their truck, or an ERP process that's in the background, or maybe it's some sort of HR tool because they need to see if there's somebody in the field that can help them. Being able to pull that into the right space in real time and give that to them while they're close to the work is very important. And I think that's where we can start to do the generative AI thinking and give them that exoskeleton for their brain and say, hey, we have all of this data. Here's some recommended approaches to what you're doing. Go have at it, right? Like, I think that makes it extremely powerful, to your point.
Well, and you can expand your trusted enterprise. So
Yeah.
in that example, you could use APIs or RPA to pull in what's the machine information of that original equipment
Yes.
you didn't make, but you want to be able to have that information to feed to that field tech. So you make a call, or
To a supplier, to
or
this,
you,
yeah.
or you make an RPA call into the instruction manual, right? And
Exactly.
Now we can digest back to the 10K and LinkedIn. If we can pull it in, now GPT can analyze it. But being able to source it, that can grow your enterprise to trusted sources outside your portal.
Yeah. Any other questions we can maybe work on real world?
Does the model change the information given based upon the persona that's so the guy in the shop floor
Very good question.
might be master's degree of engineering. Then there's somebody who needs to service
Context.
that, and
Correct.
that might be just regular blue collar job.
So-
and then there's the CIO.
Yes.
So
So exactly. So bringing the data as close to the work as we possibly can is that persona, right? Like, so if we're talking to the CIO, that is one context that we want to pass to the AI. Whether it's in a field worker in the field is a different context we want to pass to the AI. They want totally different responses to the same question.
Well, and that
Right.
can come through SSO. So does the AI know who's talking to it without you even telling
Without
it?
you even telling.
go
Yep.
into the roles are.
This is,
Yeah.
I think there's another layer on the integration of the API calls that we've seen before, because before we send the prompt, there's a lot of work going on in flows and Apex and other things that are setting, this is this person,
Right.
this is the things, do not give me an answer that looks like this person has permission to see PII.
Yep.
They don't have permission to see PII, so you gotta set all that like parameters, what we used to say, but now it's more natural language. and then
100%.
setting that context, and then sending the prompt.
Right.
But it's beyond Apex. I might need to go back to the original PO that might be stored someplace else.
Absolutely.
I might need a third-party service contract.
And that's a great case for RPA, right? Like, so whenever you're doing the robotic stuff, we have a couple customers in the manufacturing space that use RPA as that integration go-between to pull that data out of antiquated systems, like old
Yep.
legacy type systems that are there, pull that information out, put it where it needs to go, and then be able to use it, right? Like, so you can do that transformation in the process without having to do an API integration. Some of these old legacy systems don't have it. Some are blocked by IT. Some are maybe just in a situation where you can't connect to it for whatever reason. RPA has the ability to go and pull that information in, set that context, be able to really have that conversation with the user on the ground. So very interesting conversation today.
Do you know how many apps an average manufacturer has, like an enterprise manufacturer has
that's
today? Average. So it's around 750, a regular
Very
manufacturer.
precise
Yeah.
number.
If you look for companies in general, it's 1,000 apps. Every company has 1,000 or more apps. I mean, the integration possibilities are
They
limited.
can't all store data.
No, of course not. Absolutely.
It's not up here, security. What's the panel's thought on either automating or just having peace of mind pre-built into the network
Yep.
around security? Do you think there's either Salesforce or Mulesoft or RPA or any of these things that help with that peace of mind as you get into this space?
Yeah.
Or even add governance as well as security, right? Both. Ethics, yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's a feedback loop, right? So one of the things about security is you can't secure everything all the time. Like what you have to really do is you have to have your anomaly detection. What's different? How am I deviating from accepted practices, things that I've known, things that I've understood, and then you get the security comes after that, right? So it's, hey, something's kind of bizarre here, something's happening. That's where AI is starting to feel this all out. Then you start to say, okay, well, how do I now stop it? How do I stop the attack? How do I stop the anomaly? Things like universal API management. Are people here familiar with like APIs and like what they do for businesses and stuff? So there's a whole discipline behind APIs called API management. That API management discipline is all about, hey, wait a second. I've got to lock down and I have to validate every single transaction that happens because that API is the interface to my data. That data is the lifeblood. Like data is the currency of business, right? If you don't have data, you don't have money. You're not in business, right? To Lou's point originally.
Every company's a data company.
Every company is a data company. So how do you ultimately protect that? So there's AI that says, hey, there's something bizarre going on here. This call has never come from China at 3 o'clock in the morning before. Like, what's going on here? So then you get that universal API management. You get the ability to actually start to automate the security as a reaction and then proactively secure it for the future. Because now I've learned a new like behavior that is now feeding back into my model.
Nowhere to loop sounds like another use case for AI.
Say again?
Nowhere to loop sounds like another
Yeah,
use case for
yeah,
AI.
for sure. And then the Terminator comes out and
Well, I have an opinion on that. We can have a conversation after this about when Skynet became self-aware. But we'll get into that.
How far do you see the AI extending within manufacturing? Because there's a constant focus on the guys on the shop floor, but there's an entire front office that would benefit as well, right?
Yeah.
So
When you say extending in manufacturing, what do you mean? Like just
So-
breadth of...
So extending like the scope of the data that's being fed into AI. A use case that I can think of would be, so we have all these benefits of real-time monitoring, which really is the benefit to a lot of the AI, and it's understanding that there's like a 3% reduction in efficiency, because I think when you talk about like the cost savings of scheduling, that something's going to go down, somebody literally thinks that we're scrubbing a bunch of machines out there and saying, well, they all go down in 6 months, but it's not. It's monitoring efficiency within a machine, right? A 3% drop in something.
Yep.
Like you mentioned aircraft manufacturing, monitoring bearings, just to say.
It's huge, yeah.
This turbine is on the verge of going out. Let's replace it now before the aircraft is somewhere in Nebraska, right? But it's as constant and focus into that. How do we think about pairing it with like the front office, such as finance, your CFO, your sales teams, your operations teams, to say, look, we can actually extend the AI into commodities and future and pricing to optimize when the machines are actually going to be down, and then extend it even farther into the HR side.
It's a lot to unpack there, Sean.
Oh, yeah. This is a two-hour answer.
We're just going for it. So,
When we're
Yeah.
positioning this RFA, are we positioning it in a way like, let's keep it narrow scope, let's only talk to the guys on the floor? Or are we bringing it in and saying, look, bring in everybody in your company because I'm going to make everybody's life.
So, and again, I think it depends on the use case, honestly, and it really depends what you want to get out of the AI tool that you're applying, to preface with that. But again, thinking about where do companies start, right? Most are exhausted with what AI means right now. They're looking for ways that they can actually apply this in very precise, simple ways so that they can actually see it, understand the use cases, use it in their systems. I think that's a good example. Like if it gets too complicated too quickly, we can't conceptualize what AI can conceptualize. The amount of information is too broad. So starting with an individual applied use case and then expanding it from there, I think is the way to start if I had to recommend that to a customer, if anybody in this audience is in that. But again,
Yeah, I think about it very similarly, but this is the way I think about it. Every new investment requires a contribution to a business model. So what is the business model of a manufacturer or whatever? And anything, we're trying to make a profit. What is the things that contribute to top line? What are the things that contribute to growing my business, entering new markets? What are those things? Because those are the shiny toys that the CFO wants. That's what the CEO wants. What's the CEO's biggest jobs? Grow, grow, grow. That's their CEO's three biggest jobs. So how do you grow? How do you grow that business? How do you grow, enter new markets, do whatever? That's the sizzle on the steak. Like how do we grow that? Then I think, to your point, I mean, it's just as important. I mean, the person in HR or finance, they want help too, but that doesn't tend to get like the investment up front, right? Because that's kind of, let's call it like margin, let's call it like net profit, like it's bottom line stuff, right? It contributes, but really you want that top line growth. So every investment that I think for these transformative initiatives is always based on growing a business model. They're never really based on cutting costs, generally.
Do you see that changing in the past 6 to 9 months?
I think it changed in the COVID years. I think it's now coming back to growing the business rather than sustaining the business. So that's what I see.
yeah, I think in economic recession, you see more cost considerations and operational efficiencies that you're looking for. But whenever we get out of that, it's grow. And then our CEO likes to try and ask us for gift cards.
Even those operational efficiencies, but even those operational efficiencies, right? The result of that is let me save here to invest somewhere else,
Yes,
so I can grow the business
exactly.
somewhere else, where I can really get a better ROI somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
So
I think on the revenue side, one of the best use cases I've seen as simple is actually in chemical manufacturing.
Yeah.
Like contract performance, delivery of goods. We price something on a contract. We're going to deliver X tons or volume of this product over the next 6 months on
Yes.
a basis. Monitoring and then using the AI side to monitor where a contract underperforming or will underperform because of seasonality or raw material problems. Like those are things I think the CFO at that type of company cares deeply about. It's just trying to capture the revenue you've already signed on the agreement to make sure you actually do delivery of that product.
That's actually super helpful, because I think my brain always went to the process engineering shop floor, right? You're always thinking about machine uptime, vibration, sensing, or whatever.
Sure.
But how to connect the bridge over to
The thing, I have a process manufacturer right now that there's a guy who runs that forecasting raw material, but in reality, I know it's like a 26-year-old guy
Behind the scenes, yes.
spreadsheeting
Right.
trying to figure that out. And that 26-year-old is super smart, but if you augment that with AI and really looking at the data, then those two people that are doing that become way more powerful for the CFO than they are now.
Yep.
Yeah. Amanda has a question.
I think we can take one more question and then we'll start to wrap up.
I'd be interested to see who, like, ahead of, every company having a chief AI officer, right? Because we know that's going to come. Who do you see this type of automation integration, AI defaulting to from a persona perspective inside? Do you think it's going to default to IT, who has historically handled it? Like you mentioned, the plane
It's a good question.
it's a great question.
It's a very good question, and we do a lot of research into this, and I think every CEO is going to have to understand AI in the next year and a half, at least at a base level. Like every executive is going to have some hand in AI. I don't know if it's going to fall to the executives. I do know driving the AI conversation with a lot of the conversations that we've had here today is the business use case. So I don't know if that's IT. I don't know if that's the CFO who's driving business use cases from a revenue generation perspective. Is it the CEO driving it from a growth perspective? These are all conversations that we're going to have to evolve as we continue down the path.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all of the above. I think we're all full court press at this point. It's like get every C star in that boardroom and let's figure this out. Because you can't if you're going to lag in this space, you're going to lose, right? This is going too fast.
the plane builder example that you gave, right? That's pretty, forward thinking what they're trying to do. Who's the persona group that that
So right now is within customer support. So that's how they're looking to automate some of those tasks and whatnot, and also save time on deployment of new parts. Of a plane on the ground is not a plane making money, right? Same thing we can apply to a shop machine,
Absolutely.
right? So
Yeah, and again, the closest to the work that you can get that is going to make the best AI decisions and outcomes with the context. So it is important to think of. So wrapping up a little bit.
there's one hand back there.
What's that? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see it.
General Electric actually refers to a big company to massive industrial they let you convert it from the main mechanical manufacturing of a wind turbine, GE engine, to the electric. We tried this before.
Yeah.
It worked out too well. Many large GE.
Yeah. I'm sorry, say that again. What didn't work out too well?
General Electric, GE.
Yeah.
They were the best team in the market.
Yeah. And it didn't work. What didn't work? What was the outcome?
They take the financial thing and drag the whole division down to the ground.
Interesting.
Because they actually using the data, this monitoring your pilot,
Yeah.
of what time to replace the engine, because they need it.
Interesting. How do you think we could have done that better with a different set of tools, or with generative AI, or
GE
predictive?
crashed because of bottom line.
Yeah.
So we can do all the traceable numbers from the financial division.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's some risk involved, right? Yeah. So thank you for the question. I have to.
Flip back to the other screen.
Yeah. Can we flip back to the other slides? And while they're doing that, like quick thing. The $25 gift card from our CEO, it goes back to the security predictive thing, because we get random calls for everybody at Optima that our CEO needs us to buy gift cards desperately at random times during the day and send them to a specific number that nobody has. But we know it's urgent. We know that he's in terrible trouble, and we try to make sure that we're protecting him from that. So, big question, and I'm going to ask our industry experts sitting here, Flavio and Darren. What does AI integration look like for manufacturing?
I think in simplified terms, it's going to make our manufacturers more efficient. And it's going to really, I'm going to use Warren Buffett's analogy, right? When the tide goes down, you know who's swimming naked. So for the folks that are, another analogy there.
That's a good analogy.
That's not my phrase, that's Warren Buffett's, can't complain. So this is going to really separate the players from the big players.
Yeah,
folks that are investing, folks that are spending time now preparing their operations to leverage the technology, the tools, the processes, the people, right, all around to become a better manufacturer. They'll really be here in the long run. Those that are not doing that may not be here in the long run.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, so if you think about business strategy, corporate strategy, it's the things that make you different, not the things that make you the same as your competitors that drive your business. So where can you find a competitive advantage with AI? What is going to make you better, different? Like, if you're not different, if you're not better, if you're not differentiated, if there's a low barrier to entry to copy you, people will. What happens in that case? Then it's a race to the bottom, right? And the race to the bottom is on cost, right? And nobody wants to fight that battle. They want to fight a different battle. So what is the thing that makes you different? And so I think AI in manufacturing is going to help differentiate products. Probably like the easy one, if you think about just regular manufacturing, it's going to be on quality, like really high quality. How do I use AI to really help me understand tolerances and vibrations, and how do I get a really high quality product at a reasonable price, right? And then you can compete on a different dimension that has a high barrier to entry for somebody to enter the market and to steal market share from you. So I think that's where it all comes together.
Nice. Well, thank you both. For showing up today. It was a great conversation that we've had here. If anybody wants to talk to any of us up here, we'd be happy to have a conversation outside and continuous. Shameless plug, we have a generative AI solution downstairs for field. If you want to look at it from a parts and product recommendation perspective, it's a service model. We can do it for other models as well, but go downstairs, take a look at the demos that are down there, and we'd be happy to jump into a conversation. So thank you.